The night wind was cold, and the city lights glimmered like scattered diamonds across the dark horizon. Daniel stood outside the cozy restaurant with a single red rose in his hand, checking his watch for the 12th time. His heart beat anxiously, and his breath came in tense bursts. It had been years since he last agreed to a blind date, and tonight he had swallowed every last bit of pride to try again. He had been told she was sweet, kind, and someone who might finally help life feel less lonely. But as minutes stretched into an hour, the rose in his hand felt heavier, and the humiliation grew harder to swallow. Everyone around him laughed, dined, and held hands while he stood alone in front of a romantic restaurant waiting for someone who seemed like she would never come. And then, in a single shocking moment, two tiny twin girls sprinted toward him, their faces red with terror, their eyes soaked with tears, and the older one cried out, "Please, sir, they hurt our mommy. She's dying." ATM yen if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories filled with real human emotion. Please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly supports our work and helps us keep creating these heartfelt stories. ATM yen. Daniel's confusion was instant. He stared at the little girls and no more than 7 or 8 shivering, shoelaces undone, hair tangled, and breathing heavily as though they had run miles. The city noise seemed to mute around them. He dropped the rose in shock and knelt as their small bodies collided with him. The younger twin, unable to speak, just clung to his coat and sobbed as if her world was ending. The older one grabbed his arm with trembling fingers and begged him again not to let their mother die. For a second, Daniel could barely comprehend the moment. 1 second he was a lonely man embarrassed on a sidewalk, and the next he was the only person standing between life and death for a stranger. He forced himself to act, scooped both girls into his arms, and let them guide him several blocks down the street to a poorly lit alley next to a dilapidated apartment building. Behind the dumpster, he saw a woman crumpled on the ground, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, bruises already forming along her cheek and arms. She looked conscious but barely holding on. Daniel's heart surged into his throat. He pulled out his phone, called emergency services, and described everything rapidly while kneeling beside her. The woman tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The girls clung to her hands, crying for her to stay awake. Daniel tore the sleeve from his shirt and pressed it against her wound to slow the bleeding. He felt powerless but determined not to let her slip away. The sirens arrived quickly, and EMTs rushed in. The woman whose name the twins whispered was Emilia was carefully lifted onto a stretcher. The paramedics asked who Daniel was in relation to the victim. He hesitated, and before he could answer, the girls said, "He helped us. He's the only one who came." The statement cut deeper than the cold November air. Daniel promised the girls he wouldn't disappear. He climbed into the ambulance with them, and as the vehicle sped towards St. Mary's Hospital, he looked at their small, scared faces and knew his life had already changed in a way he could never have predicted. At the hospital, doctors hurried Emily away while Daniel stayed with the girls in the waiting area. They sat silently at first, their arms linked tightly around their knees. Daniel got them water and a snack from a vending machine, and after a while, their anxiety softened enough for them to speak. Their names were Lily and Grace. They explained that their mom worked double shifts as a waitress to support them. They lived in a low-income neighborhood and had no family nearby. Their father had abandoned them years earlier. Everything had been quiet until that evening when a group of men their mother once owed money to had come demanding payment she didn't have. The girls watched helplessly as Emily refused to go with them, and the men attacked her in rage. Emily had screamed for the girls to run, and they did straight into the city hoping desperately to find someone with enough kindness to help. Daniel listened with disbelief and heartbreak. He had expected tonight to be nothing more than an awkward dinner with a stranger, a small but hopeful attempt at rebuilding his own life after losing his parents and spending years feeling disconnected and alone. Instead, he found himself protecting 2 children he'd never met, caught in a situation more painful and real than anything he had imagined. When the doctor came out and reported that Emily was stable but weak from blood loss and severe shock, the girls cried in relief. Daniel felt his tension finally crack. The doctor asked if there was a guardian present. The girls looked at Daniel again, their eyes shimmering with expectation and fear. Something inside him shifted deeply. He looked the doctor in the eye and said he would stay until someone else arrived. But the truth was, no one else would. No grandparents, no relatives, no neighbors close enough to call. When Emily woke the next morning, Daniel was sitting beside her with the twins asleep on his lap. The sunlight filtering into the room caught the tear tracks on their cheeks, the exhaustion on his face, and the grateful softness in Emily's tired eyes. She could barely manage the words, but her voice was thick with emotion when she whispered thank you. Daniel reassured her that the only reason he was there at that exact moment wasn't fatal because deep down, he no longer believed in fate. It was because two little girls had done the bravest thing imaginable, trusted a stranger and asked for help in the middle of a cruel world. As days passed, Daniel became a constant presence. He helped fill out hospital forms, stayed with the girls while Emily recovered, and spoke with the police when they came to investigate. The attackers were arrested thanks to the girls' statements and the hospital documentation. Slowly, Emily regained strength, not just physically but emotionally. Daniel discovered she was the blind date he had been waiting for that night. She had been on her way to meet him when the man confronted her. She never made it to the restaurant. The coincidence hit him with almost surreal force. Their lives had collided in tragedy before they even shared their first greeting. While Emily healed, Daniel helped the girls with homework, walked them to and from school, and cooked simple meals in their small apartment. The apartment itself was modest but filled with warmth. A collage of children's drawings on the fridge, colorful stickers on the bedroom door, old but cherished toys lined neatly on a shelf. Yet the financial strain was obvious. Emily always worked herself to exhaustion to keep them afloat. Daniel realized just how much she had endured alone. His admiration for her grew, but so did his determination to help. He wasn't wealthy, but he had a stable job as a construction project supervisor. He talked to a lawyer about what could be done legally to protect Emily and the girls. Over time, the lawyer helped them file restraining orders, and Daniel insisted on helping cover some expenses until Emily could safely return to work. She protested at first, uncomfortable accepting help, but he gently reminded her that no one could survive everything she had alone and not forever. The twins warmed to him quickly. Lily loved books and would sit at the table reading aloud with exaggerated dramatic voices that made everyone laugh. Grace was the quieter one, sensitive and artistic, often drawing pictures of their new unexpected family of four stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Daniel kept every picture she gave him. He kept the first drawing in his wallet. Life felt different. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't go to bed worrying only about his own loneliness. He thought about bedtime stories, school lunches, doctor appointments, and how to balance work so he could walk the girls home in the afternoons. Emily watched as this man, who was once a stranger, began creating a sense of home for anyone they had long been without. Over the next several months, Emily fully recovered, and as life settled back into a gentle rhythm, a quiet romance grew between her and Daniel, not rushed or forced, but patient and genuine. One evening in early spring, Emily and Daniel took the girls to a park near the river. The sky was golden with sunset, and the cherry blossoms had begun to open. The twins ran ahead chasing fireflies, giggling in pure joy. Emily leaned beside Daniel on the park bench and told him she had been terrified after the attack, not only for her life but for what would happen to her children if she didn't survive. Then she looked at him with soft, grateful eyes and admitted that for the first time, she wasn't afraid anymore, not because the world had become safer, but because she finally had someone willing to stand beside her in it. Daniel felt emotion swell in his chest. He told her the truth, that he had been alone for so long he had forgotten what it felt like to be needed. She and the girls reminded him that every heart, no matter how weary, could be called back to life. The following month, Daniel helped Emily move into a safer neighborhood. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just wanted them to be safe. But one evening, as they unpacked boxes in their new home, the twins walked over holding a delicate little ring they had found while going through Emily's old keepsake box. They looked up innocently and asked, "Are you gonna marry our mom someday?" Daniel froze. Emily laughed, her cheeks flushing pink. and gently tried to hush the girls. But Grace just shrugged and said their mom was happier than ever since Daniel came. It wasn't a proposal, but it was the moment Daniel realized he was already part of their world in ways deeper than he expected. The walls he had built over the years had quietly fallen. And then one sunny afternoon, nearly a year after the night everything changed, Daniel asked Emily to marry him, not with a grand stage or dramatic fireworks but in the living room surrounded by Lily and Grace, who were the first to scream yes. Even before their mother could answer, Emily's eyes filled with tears as she whispered yes, and for a moment, Daniel felt the universe settle perfectly around them. Life wasn't perfect, money was still tight, schedules still stressful, and the past could never fully be erased. But they had love, safety, laughter, and the kind of family that wasn't given a but chosen. ATM yen. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional and powerful stories that remind people goodness still exists in the world. ATM yen. Before the ending, we ask you for one simple thing. At Negation, comment below what part of this story moved you the most. Daniel never forgot the night his blind date didn't show up, because sometimes unanswered expectations lead us straight into the moments that change everything. He had walked into that restaurant looking for a simple chance at love and walked out with a family, a purpose, and a story that would forever remind them all that miracles don't always arrive gently. Sometimes they run up crying, desperate, and begging a stranger to save the only world they have. And sometimes, that stranger becomes the blessing they never expected.